I know I'm late with this whole debacle with China imposing tariffs on the United States and stuff, but it has been getting ramped up a lot, and already the media has basically butchered this thing to death. So I thought I didn't really need to make a video on this, but honestly, after looking at it a little bit in depth now, and having some disagreements with these media outlets, I made the decision to make this video. So we already know about about how Trump already signed an executive order raising import tariffs on steel and aluminum to 25% and 10% respectively. We already knew about that, but what we didn't know about, or what we just figured out this week, or I think it was last week. I don't recall. I think it was this week. But anyway, the Chinese government decides to tax American-made products, and that's not the surprising thing. The surprising thing is how many American products they're actually taxing, because as we all know, Trump basically was just taxing steel and aluminum imports. That's about it. In fact, all the other things would just be fine. In fact, I'm sure that if there were like oil from Saudi Arabia, there wouldn't be any problems with tariff increases, or maybe even from China if I'm looking into their perspective. But they've already raised tariffs on over 120 American products. That includes wine, I think automobiles as well, but basically on a lot of the things that they tax the majority, or a whole big portion of of American products coming into China. What does this say? Well, from what the media is saying, this is going to start a trade war. Now, I would be somewhat agreeing with this, except on what they say about this. That this would actually force the United States to lose the negotiating in front of China. I completely disagree with that point, because I personally believe, kind of like Sticks Hexen Hammer does, that China is actually a paper-thin economy. Yes, it's been growing a lot ever since it's opened up in the 90s. Yes, it has a lot of these industrial cities like Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, that sort of thing. But there are still problems. There's pollution, there's bureaucracy, there's high population, there's an income inequality gap. I'm pretty sure the income inequality gap is so big that it even makes leftists who complain about the inequality gap here in the United States drop their mouths. I'm pretty sure about that. But I'm kind of getting off topic. Those are the factors that are playing into this. The fact that China is seriously backwards. Yes, according to GDP, it says that it's quote unquote the largest economy in the world, but I would have to disagree with that. I think this is more of a ploy just to get. Just for China to get investors and stuff. Now, how is this related to the tariffs that China is imposing? As we already know, there were just only two things that, in terms of imports, that the United States was raising tariffs on. My guess is because the Chinese government is scared out of their minds. Steel and aluminum are major resources that they export to the United States. Without it, their economy staggers. and they would have to rely on a lot of other stuff. Yes, they kind of have a a little bit of a diversified economy, but it's not really diversified enough where if they take steel and aluminum out of the picture, it wouldn't collapse at all. That's what I think. In fact, it would actually play in a way, it kind of plays very similarly to Venezuela, because Venezuela relies on one natural resource: oil. Now, obviously, they have already, since Hugo Chavez came into power in 1999, we haven't really had good relationships with them. But that has never stopped Venezuela from exporting oil. But they have relied on that for so long, and now that prices in the oil has dropped, or just dropped, losing a lot of income for their country. Basically, you have Venezuela like it is now, a third world country on the brink of civil war. That, I think, is what China is fearing. I think this whole growth thing, while there is at least a little bit of evidence that supports it, it's kind of supposed to be a play. I think that it's actually that these terrorists are just freaking out the Chinese government, and I think that this will bite them in the ass, in my own personal opinion, because one, they have a big trading partner from the United States. Number two, this might actually cause unrest, because the Chinese would actually lose a lot of these products that, since they cannot really get from their own country, because it's because of some of their stagnation in the economy, they have to rely on the United States for that. So when they lose something like that, or at the very least, it costs more, then you start to have a problem with the populace. Would it be anything like Tiananmen Square? No, absolutely not. I think it's just going to be like, hey, we want some of this stuff, and we're pissed off, sort of thing. But it will have a big effect on the government. Number three, it would expose the Chinese economy for what it is. Kind of similar to Venezuela's. They're over-relying on major resources like steel and aluminum. And without those, especially with money coming from the United States, that will just simply stop their economy as they know it. They're afraid. That is what they think. And I think that was actually what Donald Trump was counting on when he imposed these tariffs. Yes, there is a possibility of a trade war going on. Trade war that might happen. But economists fail to see that China's economy is not as advanced as ours. Basically, in plain face view, they're in the industrial era while we're in the consumer services era. In terms of economies, they are far behind. And since that's unless they manage to diversify their economy a little bit more and maybe get into consumer services sort of thing in terms for their economy, I don't see them gain a better advantage. I mean, they are in the midst of a trade war with their biggest trade partner, the United States of America. And this country, who just 20 to 30 years ago was one of the worst economies in the world, with basically a lot of poverty and stuff, I fail to see how China would actually do a major amount of damage to the United States. Would they do a little bit of damage? Yeah, probably, but not enough that it would be something that the United States would bend our knees to the Chinese government, or that it would affect us in the long term. In fact, I think it will just affect us in the short term, and we can easily get out of that. That is what I think. And I do not see China winning a trade war if there is one going on. On one hand, we have Donald Trump saying there isn't. On the other hand, there's the media saying that there is. No one knows. But if there is a trade war going on, I can say for certain, China will lose. My name is Noah Meehan of the Arc of Truth. Please post comments down below, like this video, share, and subscribe.